Hi, it's my pleasure to be here and be back to GBA. When they shared with me the name of GBA, I was like, what is that? And they told me it's Great Bay Area, 大灣區. So I'm from Guangzhou, Guangzhou, 我係廣州妹. And today, so I'm going to share my journey, like how I started from Guangzhou and then started a business and got over $25 million investment from the top investor in Silicon Valley, including a lot of the investors you guys probably have heard about. We got term sheet from A16Z, Cotu, Benchmark, Lightspeed. We also got investment from some of the biggest Hollywood stars like Paris Hilton, Justin Bieber, Chainsmokers. So it's quite an interesting journey and how I got there. It's gonna be one of my first time talking about my journey, and my mom is also here. It's gonna be her first time. So first of all, I want to share, I'll try to make sense of the story because I also have a lot, I'm also trying to making sense like how I got here, right? So there are a few turning points in my journey. The first one is moving to New York. Very cliche story. Over 13 years ago, I met a boy in Guangzhou and he moved to New York. And it took me a few years to get my GMAT, GRE, and TOEFL, and I moved to New York with him. New York is quite an interesting city. It's all like where you find a diverse group of people and opportunity. But I remember the first time when I just moved to New York, I struggled to even order at Subway because they don't have a menu. I remember I went to the restaurant, I don't know how to get a sandwich, and they were like, what do you want? And I don't know exactly the names of all the ingredients there, and I have to point at each of them. It's like, I want this and this and that, and can I check out? So from there to getting on the stage, it took me, or speak English and talking to investor, it took me a really long time to get there. Because I went to a school in upstate New York, I got a scholarship. One thing I didn't realize is that upstate New York is so much further to New York City compared to New Jersey and Connecticut. So it took like 3-4 hours. So every weekend to see my then boyfriend, I have to like take the bus for like 3-4 hours to go there. So the first winter break, I decided to find a job in New York. And at that time, there are not many websites or marketplace where you can find internship. Like almost everyone got recruited at the campus events. But at that time, I don't know that I could be qualified for all those like big bank shop that recruit in the school. So I went to Chrysler's. I don't know if anyone ever lived in United States and know about Chrysler's. So it's pretty much like people can find rentals and random things. And I went to Chrysler's and I found a job in New York. I immediately got accepted. I applied and immediately got accepted the next day. And later on, I found that I found a job as a real estate agent that showed people rental in New York. So it's not the most glamorous job, but at that time I feel very proud. It's like, oh my God, I work out of Fifth Avenue. I remember I took a selfie with the Fifth Avenue, like roadside. But it was that opportunity that I got to meet a lot of people, young professionals in New York, and I also able to like take the subway all around New York to see everywhere in like every island in New York. And also real estate agency is an interesting job because every young professional you meet, you get to know their lifestyle, how much they make, what their job about. So it's also a very interesting opportunity for fresh off boat Chinese international student to make friends with all the established young professionals in New York, and it kind of like threw me into the New York City immediately. So that's my first job or internship in New York. And in the summer, I still don't believe that I can get like any job in New York. But at that time, my friend from one of my classmates who went to undergrad in Stanford, that's all I know, a lot of people went to Stanford, like he's an elite student, and he posts on Facebook saying that, hey, I'm going to UM for a summer internship and we get another opportunity. Let me know this afternoon, I can bring another person to intern at UN. So that's the second turning point of my journey. I remember I called my friend immediately, say, wow, like United Nations, that's a dream. Can I trying to apply? So fast forward, I got into for that summer internship with a few hundreds other young people, also from all around the world, like Europe, Africa, and Asia, to work at United Nations for that summer. At UN, I work at this organization called Global Compact. We work on sustainability and corporate social responsibility. I remember my colleagues who work from the same office. They are from, the girl sitting next to me from Norway, and the girls sitting on my right side are from Korea, and I also have colleagues from Afghanistan and also Ghana, so it's quite really a United Nations. And because we're a group of people who are all 20 years old, and got so popular in all the events, we got invited to all the events around New York. So we pretty much get an opportunity to party everywhere in New York. So at the same, and they're all very attractive, like cool young people from all around the world. So every party, every venue, every hotel event invited us there. So also at that time, I started a blog writing about my life in New York anonymously. So that's actually how I met the organizer, Jeff. We were internet friends. At that time, I have a Weibo called 纽约小玩家. Yeah. Yeah. He's obviously he's my follower and fan. So that's how we met. And my Weibo got so popular at that time that all my friends are reading my Weibo. And I remember when I was hanging out with my friends would tell me, oh my God, 纽约小玩家 told us that that's all's happening today or this weekend, we need to go. And then I have to pretend like, oh, that's really cool, we should check it out. But pretty much all the things that they told me about is like, the source is me. So it was a really fun time, and a lot of them still don't know who I was the person behind the blog. So also at that time, I started to see the magic of internet and social media. I think I can call myself like first generation 网红 influencer. Yeah, but I don't use it anymore, so don't look me up. And that's when I started to see the magic of internet, and I was also reading a lot about what's happening in tech every day, because I think instead of like UN, everything is like super slow. What's really changing the world is what's happening in the tech world. Also at the same time in New York, I also went to a lot of tech events in New York, and that was happened at the time that a lot of people looking at opportunity from going from web to mobile, and that was like the peak time around like 2014, 2016, when everyone had an idea about an app. So the last, probably the turning point is how do I go from a product creator to an entrepreneur. So how I started is really a very nimble because I like building things. Like since I was in primary school, when I was 7 years old, I always chief editor of the school. So I always like putting together talented people who can do Photoshop, who can take photos, who can write, who can edit, put people together and create something, a project interesting. So for me, creating a product comes very natural, but still, I remember like going to an event and trying to convince a creator, a developer to help me to build an app for free, or convince a designer to help me to build a prototype so we can convince a developer. But it's really starting from like going to an event, meeting people, and telling your story again and again, hundreds of times, thousands of times, and get to a point that you can convince some people to start the journey with you. And I've been doing this, building the product in the beginning. It's just the passion of building, creating. And eventually, one day, people started to call me an entrepreneur, and that's how I became an entrepreneur. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must leap forward. So a lot of the things I have shared, at that time I didn't understand it's an opportunity, but I always give full passion and full devotion to every point, every serendipity that happened in my life. And everything, every event in my life, I always like took away and gain something from it. And I think that's also, like sometimes I might not be a blueprint for becoming successful, but I do want to create an example, like share an example. Even whatever your experience right now, you never know where you end up, and just it's. I think there's some wisdom of putting, giving 100% to whatever you're working on. What it feels like to be on the right path. So what I just mentioned is that I have a lot of events in my life that I didn't understand the meaning at that time. I only understand it when I look backward. But I do think that you know that you're in a right path. You can feel it. And this is the three things that is completely, I summarize it. This is what it feels like when you know that you're on the right path. So number one, the first thing is connecting the dots. So when you're on the right path and creating your unique path, you suddenly make sense of all the things that you have done in your past. It might be irrelevant, it might be not aligned or not the same thing that you expected or you set as a goal in the beginning. But it eventually makes sense when you're on the right path. You can connect all the dots in your past. And the second thing is that you will feel a state of flow. Like a lot of things that you're doing will feel effortless. So for example, for me, that's building a product. Definitely, there are a lot of challenging, like talking to investor, building a team, being a leader, or even speaking English on the stage. But there are always a part of it feels so effortless for you, and you can do it for as long as you want, right? And the third thing is you will feel a sense of thrilling. That's because you push yourself to an edge and doing something you have never done before. So it's almost like a combination of excitement and fear. I remember I always like push my friends to do something new, and they're like, "Oh my God, I don't know why I feel like a feeling of like fear." And I said that feels right because it's the first time that you're on the driver's seat of your life. You're on the driver's seat of your life. It's the first time you steer the wheel. You know where you're going, and you should feel a little bit of thrill, scare, and excitement at the same time. Create a dot. If I'm going to give any advice to the younger me or anyone who's experienced like feeling a little bit lost or not knowing what they're doing. I always say like embrace, especially when you're in your 20s or 30. Especially when you're in your 20s or 30, embrace all those moments of feeling lost, because that's the time for you to creating those dots that you can look back and connect those dots. And also,